While the world watches Ukraine fight Russia, 5 countries in Europe are quietly preparing for something most people are not talking about. They are not just watching, they are arming, they are building, they are spending billions on weapons and soldiers at a pace not seen since the Cold War. Poland just bought more tanks than most countries have in their entire military. Finland and Sweden abandoned decades of neutrality to join NATO. The Baltic states are building walls and bunkers. Germany is reversing 70 years of military policy, and Romania is quietly becoming a military powerhouse. Why? Because these countries know something the rest of the world is not saying out loud. They are preparing for the possibility that Ukraine might lose, and if Ukraine falls, they could be next. By the end of this video, you will understand what these countries are doing, why they are doing it, and what it means for the future of Europe. This is not speculation. This is happening right now. Let's break it down. Let's start with the country that is arming faster than anyone else on Earth. Poland is not just expanding its military, it is transforming into one of the most powerful armies in Europe, and the speed is shocking. In 2022, Poland announced it would purchase 1,000 tanks from South Korea. 1,000. That is more tanks than the entire British Army has. They are buying K2 Black Panther tanks, some of the most advanced in the world. The deal is worth billions of dollars, and they want them delivered as fast as possible. But it does not stop there. Poland is also buying 500 HIMARS rocket launchers from the United States. To put that in perspective, the US military has around 500 HIMARS. Total Poland will have the same number. These are the same systems that have been devastatingly effective in Ukraine. Poland is buying them in massive quantities. They are also purchasing 48 F-35 fighter jets from the United States, hundreds of tanks from the United States and South Korea, self-propelled howitzers, air defense systems, drones. Everything. Poland is increasing its active military personnel from 150,000 to 300,000 soldiers. That would make it the largest army in Europe outside of Russia, and they are doing it fast. So why is Poland doing this? The answer is simple. Geography. Poland sits right next to Ukraine. If Ukraine falls, Poland shares a border with Russian-controlled territory, and Poland has been invaded and occupied by Russia before multiple times. World War II, the Cold War's Soviet domination for decades. Poland remembers, and they are not going to let it happen again. Polish officials have been blunt. Their defense minister has said that if Ukraine loses, Poland is next. They are not being dramatic, they are being realistic. Russia has never hidden its imperial ambitions, and Poland knows they are on the list. But here is what makes this even more serious. Poland is not just preparing to defend. They are preparing to fight. They are building an offensive, capable military, the kind of military that could intervene if needed. The kind that could stop a Russian advance before it reaches Polish soil. Poland is spending 4% of its GDP on defense. That is double the NATO requirement. They are turning themselves into a fortress, and they are doing it because they believe the threat is real. Now, let's move north. Finland and Sweden just made one of the most dramatic geopolitical shifts in modern history, and most people do not realize how big a deal this is. For decades, Finland and Sweden were neutral. They stayed out of military alliances. They did not join NATO. Finland, in particular, had a policy of neutrality to avoid provoking Russia. It worked for 70 years, but in 2022, everything changed. Russia invaded Ukraine, and within months, Finland applied to join NATO. Sweden followed. By 2023 and 2024, both countries were NATO members. This was not a casual decision. This was a complete reversal of decades of foreign policy, and it happened fast. Why? Because Finland and Sweden realized that neutrality no longer protects them. Russia's invasion of Ukraine proved that Moscow does not respect neutrality. If Russia is willing to invade Ukraine, a non-NATO country, then Finland and Sweden could be next. Finland shares a 1,300-kilometer border with Russia. That is the longest border any EU country has with Russia. If Russia wanted to pressure or destabilize Finland, they could. And Finland was not going to wait to find out. Sweden does not share a border with Russia, but it controls the Baltic Sea. If Russia expands, Sweden becomes a LAPEC state. They could not risk being isolated. Joining NATO was their insurance policy under NATO's Article 5. An attack on one member is an attack on all. If Russia touches Finland or Sweden, they are at war with the entire alliance that includes the United States, that includes nuclear powers, that is, deterrence. But joining NATO was not enough. Both countries are also increasing defense spending. Finland is expanding its reservist system. They already have one of the largest reserve forces in Europe relative to population, and they are adding more. Sweden is rebuilding its military after years of neglect. They are bringing back conscription, expanding their navy, increasing their air force, reinvesting in defense infrastructure. And here is the key point. Finland and Sweden did not join NATO because they thought Russia would lose in Ukraine. They joined because they think Russia might win or at least survive. And if Russia survives this war, it will look for the next opportunity. Finland and Sweden are making sure they are not that opportunity. Now, let's talk about the countries that are most terrified. The Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. These three small countries sit on the eastern edge of NATO. They are former Soviet republics. They were occupied by the Soviet Union for 50 years. And they know exactly what Russian domination looks like. If Ukraine falls, the Baltic states are geographically isolated. They sit between Russia, Belarus, which is a Russian ally, and the Baltic Sea. There is a narrow land corridor connecting them to the rest of NATO called the Suwalki Gap. It is only 60 miles wide. If Russia ever wanted to cut off the Baltics from NATO, they could do it in hours. The Baltics know this, and they are preparing. Lithuania is building a border wall with Belarus, not a fence. A wall with surveillance systems, guards, and barriers. They are also increasing military spending and expanding their armed forces. Latvia and Estonia are doing the same. All three countries are buying air defense systems, anti-tank weapons, and drones. They are fortifying their borders. They are conducting regular military exercises with NATO forces. But here is the scariest part. For the Baltics, they have significant Russian-speaking populations. In Latvia, about 25% of the population is ethnically Russian. In Estonia, it is about 24%. Russia has used Russian-speaking minorities as a pretext for intervention. Before they did it in Ukraine with Crimea and Donbass, they did it in Georgia with South Ossetia and Abkhazia. The Baltic states know that if Russia wins in Ukraine, the same playbook could be used against them. Russian media could claim the Russian-speaking populations are oppressed. Russia could send in troops to protect them. And suddenly the Baltics are facing the same situation Ukraine faced in 2014. That is why the Baltics are not just building walls. They are building resilience. They are integrating their Russian-speaking populations, strengthening their national identities, making sure there is no excuse for Russian yet interference, and they are making it clear to NATO that if Russia moves on them, NATO must respond immediately, not in days, in hours, because once Russian troops are on the ground, it is much harder to push them out. Now the most shocking transformation: Germany. Germany has spent the last 70 years trying to distance itself from its military past. After World War II, Germany adopted a pacifist culture. They kept their military small. They relied on NATO for protection. They focused on NATO, trade and diplomacy instead of tanks and jets for decades. Germany barely met NATO's defense spending requirements. They let their military deteriorate. By the 2010s, the German military was so underfunded that soldiers trained with broomsticks instead of guns because they did not have enough weapons. But in 2022, everything changed. 3 days after Russia invaded Ukraine, the German chancellor announced a complete policy reversal. He called it a Zeitenwende, which means turning point in German. Germany committed 100 billion euros to rebuilding its military. 100 billion. That is more than most countries spend on defense in a decade. Germany is now increasing its defense budget to meet and exceed NATO's 2% GDP requirement. They are buying new fighter jets, new tanks, new air defense systems. They are modernizing their entire military, and they are doing it fast. Why the sudden change? Because Germany realized that relying on diplomacy and trade does not work with Russia. For years, Germany tried to maintain good relations with Russia. They built gas pipelines. They traded heavily. They believed economic ties would prevent conflict. Then Russia invaded Ukraine anyway, and Germany realized they were wrong now. Germany is facing a harsh reality. If Ukraine loses, Russian forces could be within a few hundred kilometers of German territory. Poland would be on the front line, and Germany would need to be ready to defend itself and its NATO allies. Germany also knows that the United States might not always be there. American politics are unpredictable and its future is uncertain. Germany cannot assume US protection forever, so they are building their own strength. This is a monumental shift. Germany has not had a powerful military since World War II, and now they are building one again, not for conquest, for defense, but the implications are huge. Finally, let's talk about the country nobody is paying attention to. Romania. Romania does not get much media coverage, but quietly, they are becoming a critical military power in Eastern Europe. Romania is increasing defense spending. They are hosting NATO forces, they are building military infrastructure, and they are preparing for a potential conflict on their northern border. Why? Because Romania shares a border with Ukraine. If Ukraine falls, Romania is next to Russian-controlled territory, and Romania has a region called Moldova right next to it, where Russia already has troops in the Martin breakaway region of Transnistria. Romania knows that if Russia wins in Ukraine, Moldova could be next, and if Moldova falls, Romania is directly threatened. So Romania is doing what Poland is doing, arming, preparing, building up forces. They are purchasing F-16 fighter jets, Patriot missile systems, modernizing their army, and they are coordinating closely with NATO. Romania is also critical because of the Black Sea. Romania controls part of the Black Sea coastline. If Russia dominates the Black Sea, Romania's security is at risk. So they are investing heavily in naval capabilities and coastal defenses. Romania might not be as loud as Poland or Germany, but they are preparing just as seriously because they know the threat is real. So what does all of this mean? Let's bring it together. 5 countries: Poland, Finland, Sweden, the Baltic states, Germany, and Romania are all preparing for the same scenario. A scenario where Ukraine does not win. A scenario where Russia either wins or fights to a stalemate and keeps Ukrainian territory. And if that happens, these countries know they could be next. This is not about politics. This is not about supporting or opposing any side. This is about cold geopolitical reality. These countries are looking at the map, looking at history, and making decisions based on what they see. Poland is building the strongest military in Europe outside of Russia. Finland and Sweden abandoned neutrality and joined NATO. The Baltics are fortifying borders and preparing for worst-case scenarios. Germany is reversing 70 years of pacifism. Romania is quietly arming. They are not doing this because they want war. They are doing it because they want to prevent war. The logic is simple. If you are strong enough, Russia will not attack. If you are weak, you become a target. Deterrence. That is the strategy. Build up so much strength that the cost of attacking is too high. Make it clear that any aggression will be met with overwhelming force. But here is the uncomfortable truth. The fact that these countries are preparing this way tells you what they really think. They are not confident Ukraine will win. They are hedging. They are getting ready for the possibility that the war ends badly, and they are making sure they are not caught unprepared. Western media talks about supporting Ukraine until victory, but the countries closest to Russia are not betting on victory. They are betting on survival, and survival means being ready for the worst. This is the new reality in Europe, the biggest military buildup since the Cold War, and it is happening because the threat is real, immediate, and possibly coming sooner than anyone wants to admit. If this opened your eyes to what is really happening in Europe, hit that subscribe button. We break down the strategies, conflicts, and preparations that the media does not explain. Drop a comment. Did you know these countries were arming this fast? Let me know. Stay informed, because while everyone is focused on Ukraine, the next phase is already being prepared for, and these 5 countries are making sure they are ready. I will see you in the next one.